Are you looking for a better way to play player props or daily fantasy sports? Well, look no further than Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the leading over-under daily fantasy game. Why? Because it's so easy to use and win. You can make your picks in under 30 seconds and win up to 10 times your money in one day. Right now, we have a special offer for our viewers and listeners of the AHTT podcast. All you got to do is sign up now and use the promo code BACKPACK. Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. That's right. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. So, join the over 150,000 others who found a better way to play and download the Prize Picks app today. AHTT podcast, episode 206, the final episode of 2021. You rocked with us on the previous episode, myself, Dexter Henry, Bryan Fonseca, also here. If you rocked with us on the previous episode, it was, that time of the year for us. It was the end of the year. AHTT podcast, Hip Hop Awards. We do this every year. That was part one. We went through a whole bunch of different categories. Part two, this is where the real fun begins, in part two. Part two is where we give you the albums of the year. You will find out our album of the year. We give you our top 10 albums of the year from each of us. Bryan and I have not talked about this and how our list is before. Obviously, we talk all the time during the year and on the show. We talk about albums. We talk about things of that nature. And we'll comment on albums the other day, from time to time. But, we do not know everybody's exact order. We probably have an idea of what certain things are. Yeah, but we do not know the exact order. How you doing, Bryan?
Look, it's been an interesting time, right? Because there are sports worth talking about that we're going to get into next year because a lot of things are changing. But I like that we're sort of sticking to the hip hop thing. I will say this though, the only non hip hop thing that I will mention.
Oh, here we go. Going forward. Here we go. Here we go. I know what this is going to be about. Here we go.
Splinter Cell is back, baby. If you follow this pod, you know I've been calling for this shit for years. Splinter Cell looks like they might come back and come out before GTA 6. Now they're actually like in the very, very beginning stages, but the announcement came out, Ubisoft came out and said they're gonna remake Splinter Cell. I don't know what capacity or whatever the case may be. I assume that it's gonna take a couple years or so to sort of build that out. But look, I'm excited. Shit, I might even reach out and try and be part of the team. You know what I'm saying? Like, I might have to do that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's all. That's all I wanted to get in there before we get into our top 10. But I'm ready. My top 10 is good. My top 10 is very solid. I was not very optimistic because this year I didn't feel like gave me a lot of replay value necessarily. Yeah. Then when I went back, there were a lot of projects that were very good. I just, we'll see how much I revisit them, over the next few years or so.
It shall be interesting to see. You are hyped about Splinter Cell. I don't really have any video games to be hyped about right now. Still trying to get a PS5. That's daunting.
Same. Yeah.
With these COVID numbers going up, that might be even more daunting. So who knows? Who knows it all? All right, let's get into it. 2021 hip hop albums of the year. We do this. We're not going to start with the one, obviously, folks. We're going to start with 10. We're going to start from 10 here. You want to go first, or you want me to go first, Bryan?
I can go first. If you
can go first.
I can go first if you want.
All right, let's go.
Let you sort of be the main event at the end.
I don't know about that, but okay, yes.
My number 10 was shocking to me because this episode, I'm going to say, Dex, you should probably leave the camera on both of us for a good amount because of the reactions like to shit. I think that it'll be definitely worth it.
Here we go.
My number 10 shocked me because it came in toward the end. This is an album that we talked about, and we were like, hey, I think this might crack top 10, whatever the case may be. And it did. For me, it's Chomp 2 by Russ.
Okay.
And, it has no real theme necessarily. It's just sort of one of these lyrical flexing projects.
Yes.
But it's strong for what it is. It sounds more like a compilation mixtape, but I feel like it was too good not to include in my top 10. And for those listening, we're going to get to honorable mentions, or at least I am later on. I do have a few, but not many. The Russ album even got a good verse from Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
which, not to diss Snoop Dogg, but like,
Over a Primo beat too.
right. That's the thing. Like, it's Snoop Dogg at this stage, he's not handing out like, amazing verses to everybody necessarily. He's not even like a straight just hip hop artist anymore in that way. Like, he's so much bigger than that at this point. And he got like a really good, really focused verse from Snoop Dogg, which I was impressed by. The guests overall brought it. Production was very strong. It did get a little weaker toward the end for me. This is probably why it comes in at 10, but still, this is 10 out of like however many albums I listened to this year, and then some. Standouts to me were Blue Chip featuring Ransom, which was the second track, Faith featuring Jadakiss, which was shortly after that, and then Free featuring Big Crit, Snoop Dogg, and Primo, DJ Premier, who produced that beat that we were just talking about, and then Distance with I think Ghostface Killah and Conway. Conway had a really good verse on that. So Russ, Chomp 2, my number 10 album of the year.
Number 10 album of the year for Bryan there. Not bad at all. Okay, not bad. That also did make my list. It's a little higher than Bryan had it. So it was not at number 10 for me here. So look, I'm with Bryan. I thought we'll get into this more, but I thought this was a okay year. I don't think this was a great year for hip hop in terms of albums. I thought it was just okay. But going back in the last month or so and really listening to some stuff and then having some stuff like Chomp 2 that slid into my top 10, it has been interesting going to listen to some of this and seeing what really has a high amount of replay value. So for me, coming in at number 10 was an album I believe that was released in early November. It was by a person who was 1/4 of the Slaughterhouse Gang, that is Joel Ortiz, with his album Autograph. I thought this was a solid listen from Joel Ortiz. Maybe not some good as some of his solos that he's had before. His joint he had a couple years ago with Apollo Brown, but it was a really good album with some really good lyrical flexing and some decent production. Hitmakers are on this. Apollo Brown is on this. So good variety of production. Pretty tight. Like this from Joel Ortiz here. Not bad. I encourage people to check it out. I don't think it's a great album by any means. Probably would give it about 3.5 out of 5, 7 out of 10, somewhere in that range. But a really good listen by Ortiz, who's showing you, and I think showed you a lot on this album. He's become even lyrically sharper. There's a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection about different times in life. And I think it's a really good listen. So definitely check that out if you can. That was my number 10 album for 2021, The Autograph by Joel Ortiz. All right, Bryan, what you got next at number 9?
I did also like that Joel Ortiz album, and it was tough because it was in my 10 before, and then it had to sort of get bumped out. I really liked also Monday, which came out a couple years ago, another album that he had. Number 9, we're going to the UK for this one. Gets Conflict of Interest.
Okay,
Gets,
I did listen to this album. Okay,
UK artist. It was an album that I saw was highly rated, and I went to go check it out. And spoiler alert, this is not the only UK album that is in my list. But Gets Conflict of Interest. Track 5 through track 12 was a really strong run in particular. There's some back-to-back like heartfelt stuff on there. One featuring Ed Sheeran, 10,000 Tears, and then right after it's Emily Sandé on a song called Sonia. And Emily Sandé, she did one of my favorite features ever on a Tiny Temper album many years ago. The last song, Lil Bo Peep, has a great verse from Dave, which I did mention in last week's episode when we were talking about verse of the year and those sort of things. The intro song, Fine Wine, passes the fight test, as in, something that you could come out to at a fight or whatever the case may be. Usually when I hear an intro to an album, like I want some sort of energy or some deep introspection, or like I want something to sort of capture me right away so that I could continue listening to it. And this absolutely passed the test. Favorite song is probably a song named Dead to Me, which I thought was really good. There were a couple other joints on there as well throughout the album, but I thought Conflict of Interest was really strong. And I like Gets. I liked what he did. He got a good verse from Skepta also on a song called IC3. And,
I really like that song too.
I like Skepta. So, I had to check that out also. But yeah, shout out to Gets, number 9. Originally higher when I was first compiling this list. And then there was some rearranging, I had to bump it down to 9. But I still think it was really strong. And when Gets drops another album, I'll be there.
All right. There you go. And Bryan and I did talk about this, which is interesting. Bryan does not have any ties As if anybody knows, the first time we did this, Bryan had multiple times. Back when we only used to do top 5 albums of the year, we did this. But I had a tie this year coming in at number 9. Could not decide where to go on with these, and it's 2 albums. One album from D Smoke,
Mm.
War and Wonders, and also a part 2 of a series from Common, A Beautiful Revolution Part 2. Those were my albums there. Let me start off first with the D Smoke project. I thought this was a solid project. Some really good songs that I loved. Some really good features. BJ the Chicago Kid. Um, there's another song with Marsha Ambrosius that I think is absolutely fantastic on this record too. At the end, the album's a little bit weak in the middle for me, but the beginning is really good song. One of the standouts is a track called Dirty Mercedes. There's some really good production on this. I think D Smoke has put out 2 really good projects to start his career. Not his EPs that he had before, but these albums. I think he can use for some tightening on it, but the lyricism is sharp on this. I think early in his career, there's a lot of comparisons to Kendrick, but there was a lot of introspection on this, talking about how he's dealing with his place now as a rapper, now that he has a little bit of fame, and how he's been moving through that. I thought there was some really good stuff on that in terms of that. Wish the project was a little bit tighter, but the standout tracks are really, really good on this album, and some of the production is really good as well. So I encourage everybody to check that out. A Beautiful Revolution Part 2 by Common. I think last year, I don't remember where I had Part 1. I think it was in my top 4. I really liked it. Loved the production on it, the live instrumentation. Common comes back with this. I do not think this is quite as good as the first one, but there are some really good tracks and features here, including another track with Black Thought in Common, which Black Thought just does what Black Thought does as usual, that I encourage everybody to check out. They had the song "Say Peace" on Part 1. PJ, R&B singer who's featured all over the first project, is on this again and does an excellent job showcasing her vocals and chemistry with Common here. So I really, really encourage everybody to check this out. I think Common's made some really good, inspiring music, especially in the times that we have been in, with a lot of social unrest and talking about change and race. I think Common's really done well, and it's really the blend of his lyricism, as he is fantastic at, but along with the production. Standout tracks on here: Beautiful Chicago Kid, When We Move with Black Thought on here as well too. Imagine is another really great song on here, and then Get It Right, the final song before the outro to close this album. All really good. If you like live instrumentation with hip hop, thoroughly and say check this out. But number 9 for me, tie, War and Wonders, D Smoke, A Beautiful Revolution, excuse me, not Revelation, Part 2 by Common.
And at number 8, I am not going to spoil Dexter's list, but I will say that this is an album I know that he is higher than me, so I'm going to let him talk about it more later on. I was surprised that this fell to number 8 for me, but look, I think the year was a little bit stronger than I thought, but still at the same time, in some ways we thought that it could have been better. But anyway, number 8, I thought was a really good album. To Kill a Sunrise, Coda the Friend, and Static Selecta, which may be surprising to Dexter. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain he has it higher. To me, it was consistently good to very good. At times, I didn't revisit it as much as I thought, but like I did like a couple of songs a lot. Wolves, in particular, was one of my favorite songs of the year that I probably replayed a good amount. Hate, The Love, Dayglow were some others. And I like the first half like a good deal more than the second. So I found myself replaying more of the songs in the first half of the album. It's a nice and tight listen also. There was nothing that I sort of ran across the room to skip, but there were a couple of joints that I didn't necessarily like. I would tend to skip and not really play often at all, which will probably be a theme as we go forward on this list. But yeah, number 8, Code of the Friend, Static Selecta, some good, underground, if you're into that sound, some good underground hip hop. Not like the Rock Marciano underground, but like, like that's a different sort of, like, that's the Match Hami bag. This is a little bit different of that. But if you like Code of the Friend, if you like Static Selecta production, it's a nice solid listen. And I do think it's something that, to me, I think they can do a better part 2 of, right? Like, I think that there's sort of more to explore here. I would like to see them go a little bit deeper with certain things. So I'm hoping that they come back with a part 2 maybe next year if the time allows for it. So yeah.
Okay. Brian's right. I will talk more about this later. I did have it higher than Brian did on his list there. But my number 8 is a album that Brian has already spoken about. And
Ooh.
that would be, yeah, it's an album you already talked about. That would be Chomp 2 by Russ. Um,
I'm a little surprised you had it as high as 8.
yeah, I had it as high as
I'm
8.
surprised you had it higher than I did.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I really enjoyed the album. It
Because you
was one of
typically don't like guest heavy albums. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but they work, and the album feels like a compilation. I think I said this to you
Hmm.
before. It feels
Yeah.
that way, but the production's really good. He got some really good producers on here. Jake One, Ninth Wonder, DJ Premier, Static Selector is on here. High Tech is on here with a verse from the game that's really good. The features are really good. It's a lyrical flexing album. It's almost in a way, and this was an album I had really highly rated a couple years ago. It's almost in a way you look at like Prime when it came out, back in 2014. That was something's really good, really lyrical flexing, but the production's good. It's a really tight listen. I think Russ, it'd be nice to see him do more with themes, but I thought he did well in terms of rapping all over this various production. I think that I would like to see him do a little bit more overall, as I said, with thematically. But the guests were good. Everybody worked. I didn't think anything was out of place. Hit Boy, also another producer on this album, I forgot to mention as well too. Brian knows I don't like things that are very feature heavy, but I think for what it is, it was very good and it was very well executed. It's a really good listen. It's solid. I'd probably say it's like 7.5, 8 out of 10 in that range, and I think it's a really good listen. So if you like some lyrical flexing, you like some good production, some of the producers I mentioned, I highly recommend it. You check out Chomp 2 by Russ. I thought Chomp 1, which was an EP that dropped very late last year as well, also was pretty good too. I think Brian actually is the one who encouraged me to check that out last year.
Yeah.
That was in my
Chomp
honorable
Chomp one was
mention.
good.
That was in my honorable mentions for EP of
EP.
the
Yeah.
year last year. So yeah, no, I liked what Russ did here, and he came in at number 8. I thought it was a little bit stronger than some of the albums that I had underneath it.
Yeah, we're getting to the really good part. This is the exciting part for me of the list.
Oh
Like now
God,
we're getting to it, right? All right, let's move it along. Number 7. Number 7, I have Tyler the Creator, Call Me If You Get Lost.
you know what's funny, man?
Yeah.
It's funny. I This is an album I had to listen to, and I never got to. I just never got around to it.
Okay, it's good.
Unfortunately, I heard good things, and I just never got around to it. And it's one of these things like I'm mad. It was on my list, and I must have forgot to go back. But go ahead.
I'll say this. It's super boom bappy, which I love.
I can like that.
Like it's a totally different vibe from his last 2 albums. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that here, but like I only have I don't have many skips, but I do have a few. And that's sort of why it falls down to 7. DJ Drama is all over this, which, that's a nice little throwback for me, sort of to that. It's another one of these albums, kind of like Chomp 2, where it sounds like a mixtape sort of deal, right? Um, it's just good, solid rap. I think it's better than Russ's album. It was for me. I also call this the Dat Piff album of the year. So I'm
Hmm.
giving it that award because that's what it sort of takes me back to. Different sounds from Igor and Flower Boy. But he has 3 very good albums in a row. Corso, which is one of my favorite, just pure rap songs of the year. Lumberjack, Manifesto featuring Domo Genesis, which samples the same beat as Nazareth Savage on Streets Disciple by Nas from many years
Wow.
ago. Yeah, it's a good flip. It's a very good flip. But it's more skips than even some of the previous albums that I mentioned. But the replayable songs on this album are very replayable, and that high slugging percentage was good enough for me to bump it to 7 in this instance.
Okay, not bad. I'm gonna have to check that one out because I did not check it out. But I'd heard some good things, which makes me want to go check it out. And the fact that you thought it was even better than Russ's album, even though it had a compilation feel as well too.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Tyler's on a good run, man. I give him
yeah,
props. Like he's on a good run. I think this album is even nominated for a Grammy for what that's worth. I
I
mean,
think it was. If I
that's
remember
not
from the
everything, but I think it's him. I think Nas is there, and I think J. Cole is there, and a couple others I'm forgetting. But
Okay.
go for Tyler.
All right, we're moving along. Number 7. Number 7 for me, it's funny. Tyler's kind of got some fame, but I'm kind of going. I guess this would be on the underground scene. This is also, as Bryan said, this is not the Rock Marciano, Makami vein of rappers in that, but this is an underground rapper from LA that he had put out a project earlier this year, and I thought this guy's had an interesting career because it started off with a spark. Not to say that he turned garbage, not go into that, but he started off with a spark, and I feel like his albums have been kind of mediocre. He put out an album last year that was pretty long, that didn't crack my top 10. But it's the artist Blue, rapper Blue, out of LA. He dropped an album this year, The Color Blue, which came in for me at number 7. Now, here's with this album. I actually think is probably his best work since Below the Heavens, which I believe came out in 2007 with Blue in Exile. Fantastic album. This is probably his best work. It was really focused. And if you look at the name, it's called The Color Blue, which is the artist name BLU, but E is in the parentheses. And this whole album, every song involves the word blue. And it's about different emotions and feelings and different things. It's a really quick listen. It's 11 tracks, 43 minutes. Now, some of the stuff about him constantly using the word blue can become repetitive on certain songs. However, the execution of different concepts and around the word blue and feelings and emotions do work really well. The rapping is at a very high level. It is very boom bap heavy. Is very soul sample heavy in terms of the production on here. But I like it. It's a tight listen. I've gone back to it a few times. And I think it's something, like I said, the use of blue can become a bit repetitive in the theme, but I do think it's executed extremely well on certain songs, especially as You Ain't Never Seen Blue, Because the Sky is Blue, Blue World, which closes the song, was a fantastic album. Mr. Blue. There's some really good songs on here where he really gets into different subjects. Even We Are Darker Than Blue, talking about skin tones and things that Black people, particularly those of a darker hue, face. It's really interesting on here. So yeah, Blue, I think a really good project, and it was nice to see him have something that was tighter, in my opinion, a lot more focused than we've seen from him in recent years. So yeah, number 7 for me, Blue, The Color Blue, my number 7 hip hop album of the year.
I did like that album. I don't know. For me, it just didn't really hit. I guess in the same way, so to speak.
Yeah, I can see how that album, it's good, but I can also see how it's tough for people to go back to it consistently.
Yeah.
If I'm being fair about it, like it's not one of those things I think that you want to constantly go back to, but it's a great album to throw on when you want to. I think around, you know what it is, and this is not even any shade to the album. It's a great cleaning album, right? Not that it's just like annoying Black. I know it's
So if you don't clean a lot, you don't.
Yeah, but and sonically it's good because when I say that, I mean sonically it's kind of mellow. If you kind of want something chill to clean to with some good lyrics in background and some substance, where you're not, because sometimes you want to clean something up tempo. It just really depends on
Yeah.
your vibe. If you're looking for a more mellow album, jazz, soul samples with some good rapping, this is it for you. I don't think it's amazing thematically, but I think it's solid. And I think lyricism from Blue, who's a really great lyricist, is good on here. But yeah, I can understand why it might be tough for some people to go back to.
We clean the salsa over here. You know what I'm saying? Salsa, maybe some
Salsa.
Latin trap also.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say nothing stereotypical. Yeah, you on this Latin trap now. I can only imagine how you look when you clean the house. Sheesh.
Getting distracted every few seconds.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
yes, I see this. Yes.
Mopping could be therapeutic though.
It can be.
I'll say that. But particularly on a Saturday. All right, number 6. Dexter, I badly wanted to put this album in my top 5. I really tried.
Okay.
I tried, but I just I just couldn't get there. You know what I mean? Because the top 5 is very strong. I will say that. But and then number 6. All right, so you remember I talked about Mike Towers' album, how it was like Mike and it was basketball themed, et cetera, et cetera. This album is also basketball themed.
Okay. I know what this is. Yes.
And it's called Flu Game by AJ Tracy, also from the UK. And it was an album that this was, to all the albums here, other than maybe the Russ one, it was one of the ones that surprised me a lot. I really like AJ Tracy.
This is gonna be interesting. This is interesting. Okay, this is very interesting. Go ahead.
So I only have three skips. Only one is egregious. Like only one is a cleaning skip, as we call it up here. Which to me that's a great percentage. If 13 of the 16 songs I really like. Nav is a bland artist, but he gave AJ a great feature here on a song named Cool Coach, which is one of my most played songs of the year and my most played song here. Tracks 4 through 13 is a nice, solid, and for me a skipless run. Like I could play through that whole thing and like I'm just gonna have a good time. A lot of fun songs, a lot of bops, moments of introspection. Also, Little More Love was I think one of the lead singles, and that song is great. Short, nice and sweet, but has like a cool message in it. Also, Perfect Storm in particular also is another one. West 10 is like a very different sounding experimental but dope record that closes out the album, which I thought was pretty cool. Took a chance on that one. A lot of well done flips of R&B songs and R&B lyrics and things of that nature. Kaylani has a good feature on here. She flips Independent Woman Part 1 on a song called Coop. And then T-Pain is also on a song called Summertime Shootout, and he gives a very good feature as well. Standouts here, Cool Coach, Euro Step, Little More Love, Top Dog, and Perfect Storm. AJ Tracy in at number 6, almost at number 5 in my album of the year category was Flu Game.
So what's funny is like this is kind of like what I think Blue's album is for Bryan. Bryan told me to listen to this, and I remember this because I was listening to the album, and I got stuck in some traffic, and it just didn't grab me, man. There was a couple songs. The one with Nav I really did like, and I like that verse. I think I texted you about that.
Woo! Yeah, woo, that shit is hard, son. I love London Drill. All right.
The album, and it's funny because like we have one thing to see with us, and we've talked about this on this podcast. We have some UK rap which we've given love to over the past couple of years, and it's going to be heavy in both of our lists this year. This was one that just did not hit for me in that way.
I can see that.
I just was like, it wasn't bad or anything. It just was like, okay, it probably will be in my honorable mentions list. I thought it was good enough for that. Like it's not, but it just didn't. But it's exactly what Bryan said about the Blue, which I can kind of see, and it didn't hit for me in that way. But where I do have commonality with Bryan in terms of number 6 is this is the album I wanted to put in number 5 for me. I think it's a really good album. I kind of feel bad about putting it at number 6 because I think it's a really solid album. But when the disparities between probably 3 and 6 or 2 and 6 in my list, it's really so tight. I mean, we're splitting hairs.
What I think you're gonna.
This is splitting hairs here. And I know what Bryan thinks I'm gonna put, but it's not what I'm going to put. I know what he thinks it's gonna be,
really?
But it's not. It's not that. Yes. Don't
say anything because it might be on your list later.
For me, number 6 is All the Brilliant Things, Sky Zoo.
Oh,
friend of the podcast. Friend of the podcast.
Holy shit.
Friend of the show. Really like this album. I can make the argument that this is the best concept album that came out this year.
This is the shocker of the show so far. This at only number 6.
This only at number 6. Wow. I think as much as I like this album, I really do. It's a fantastic album talking about gentrification and the impacts of it. And I think Sky, he came on the podcast well before when he was just in the early stages of recording this and talked to us about this concept. And we were so intrigued about it. And I think he hit it, really well. There's a couple things I could skip on this album that I was not necessarily songs I weren't necessarily in love with. But overall, I do really like the project. I think there's a lot of good standouts here on this project. Obviously, the lead single, Bed-Stuy is Burning, absolutely fantastic. I enjoy it. I was supposed to be a trap rapper. The Scrimmage, Culture-ish, fantastic song. Bodega Flowers, which blew up via TikTok fame. St. James Liquors. There's a lot of good stuff where Sky is just so talented at painting a picture of what things are and what they are, but also weaving in the impacts of how things are in the neighborhood. And we talked to him about this album on an episode you can go back and listen to earlier this year if you want to check it out. This was tough for me because I really like the album. As usual, sonically, I always like a lot of Sky's albums because, like him, we both have a love of jazz, and this very much influenced on this album. As is the case with a lot of Sky albums. So yeah, I know Bryan's shocked. I think there's a great argument this could have been top 4, but I edged other things out that I kept coming back to a little bit more. I'm sorry, Sky, you know you're my guy, but he's at 6. All the Brilliant Things, Sky Zoo. There you go.
Because of the concept, that Sky was my artist of the year. We're gonna get to that album later on my list. So Sky, I got you. Don't worry about it. In at number 5. Oh my God, I wanted to put this album higher. I just couldn't do it. Dex.
Which I don't. I think I feel like I kind of know where you might. It's one of 2 that I know you might be on here, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I have a couple possibilities here, but I'm not 100% sure.
I did not.
But I think I have a feeling we might have the same number 5. I have this feeling that we actually might have the same number 5. But go ahead.
So keep the camera on us. So
camera's on.
Backpack Broadcasting continues to bring you the best original sports content, but now you can get more of the content you love. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus content, including behind-the-scenes footage and interviews from the Sports Walk, Sideline Stories, or the Ain't Hard to Tell podcast. All this exclusive content comes via Patreon. There are tiered levels of patronage, and each Backpack Broadcasting patron receives exclusive perks. Your support helps Backpack Broadcasting create more of the original content that you love. Visit Backpack Broadcasting's Patreon page and become a patron today.
all right. I didn't think I was gonna put 4 ahead of 5 in the way that I did. I thought that I was gonna have those 2 albums flipped. But in at number 5, and I love this artist. This is one of my fucking favorite artists on the planet.
I think we have the same number 5. I think we have the same number 5.
Number 5 on my list for album of the year. It's Lil Sims. Sometimes I might be introvert. Dex is nodding his head.
Also my number 5. Number 5.
We're gonna get into this tag team style.
This was tough for me too. It was tough to put over even Scott. Like it was so tough. I think the albums were so close. It was really tough for me. But yeah.
Like I entertained putting 4. I mean, originally I had 4 and 5 flipped, and I flipped them recently.
Yeah.
And I entertained having it the other way, where Lil Sims' album is 4 and the album I have at 4 is 5, which I'll get to. I even entertained AJ Tracy going ahead of this because it's tighter. Wow. It just isn't as good. Yeah, I really like that AJ Tracy album. So Lil Sims' album. One, I still really like it. It's one of my favorite albums this year. Lil Sims is one of my favorite artists. One of my top 7, 8 favorite artists right now, probably. Like they put something out, I'm running to it right away. I don't think this is as good as The Gray Area, which I had as my second album of the year 2 years ago, after Bandana by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. I think Gray Area is just tighter and a little bit better. I didn't know where this would be necessarily, but I knew it was going to be great. Dexter the Skits. Yep. If not for the skips, this would be in my top 2 or 3. Okay.
I agree.
If not for the skips, this would be in my top 2 or 3. I think it would definitely be at least 3rd, probably 3rd. I would probably say 3rd with confidence. And it's not just the skips, but it's skits rather, but it's also where they are. Track 1, 6 minutes long, ends with a skit. Skit. I keep saying that. Skit with a T. Ends with a skit. 1 minute long. Tracks 5, 7, which is almost 3 minutes long. 11, almost 3 minutes long. 14 and 17, almost 3 minutes long, are all skits. That's 5 skits plus 6 if you count the intro one that I told you, or the one at the end of the intro. That's a lot. Okay, like that's college dropout, late registration territory.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where I just wish it were tighter. The first 4 tracks are an exceptional start. I really don't prefer long intros in albums. I kind of like, 2 minutes, a minute and a half, 2.5 minutes, whatever. Just like get me going, get me wanting to continue. The intro is 6 minutes, but goddamn, Introvert is great. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. I just wish it didn't have a skit at the end. And then, the middle's strong. I feel like it's a bit weaker toward the end, Dex. I don't know if you're with me on that, this album.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a bit weaker toward the end. And my standouts before I toss it to you real quick, a lot of them are in the beginning. Introvert, Woman, I Love You, I Hate You, Rolling Stone, and Speed. Speed and Rolling Stone sound like gray area songs, by the way. But yeah, I love this album. I really wanted to put it higher. And I think if not for the skits, which I don't think are necessary to sort of tell the story and have this cinematic approach to the album that she wanted, I think this could have been in my top 2 or 3. But some people disagree and they still have it as, higher than we do. So
Look, I failed with the gray area. I slept on that album. I just got an album this summer, which I agree with Bryan is a better album than this album. And Little Sims right now is one of the best rappers in the world. Period. Okay? Period.
Yes.
She's one of the best rappers in the world. There's no doubt about this. I like this album. I really do. I'm with Bryan on this 100%. And people know me. A couple things I like. Like my album's tighter. Like my albums with less skits or interludes. Interludes are what we're really talking about here with this album. Bryan mentioned all the songs, and there are great songs on this album. Fantastic songs in this album. Introvert to kick it off, as I said. Woman, which is a fantastically really good, infectious song with UK R&B singer Cleo Sol, which if people haven't checked out her music, please do. Really good. Dropped another good album this year. Was probably in contention for my non-hip-hop album of the year called Mother. Really good. I Love You, I Hate You, another fantastic song. In which she talks about like her dad who is not around, which is really good. I do agree that the end of the album becomes a little bit weaker. And I think one of the things is the interludes here, why they don't work, is they break up a lot of the good energy and flow that you had with this album.
Yeah.
You're having this kind of good energy, and then here comes this interlude that you're like, oh, this kind of doesn't fit. And that's where interludes can really hurt. I think you would maybe feel a little bit better about the end of the album, because in my opinion, there are really 2 good songs at the end of this album. Well, 3 actually, and Fear No Man, How Did You Get Here, and Misunderstood. All those songs are absolutely fantastic. But what comes between Fear No Man and How Did You Get Here? And interlude. And I'm sorry, Lil Sims, I love what you did here in terms of rapping and the song making. The interludes just didn't really work for me. And I think that's why it's lower. But it sucks because the songs are so good.
Long interludes too.
Yeah, it really sucks because the songs are so good and they're long interludes. And she kind of is going with this almost like this fairy tale theme of coming to enlightenment around there and finding happiness throughout the struggles that we have while she's expressing herself. And I get all that. And I really like this album, but I do think it suffers from the interludes and the length. And I just really wish she had tightened it up. And I hope Little Sims, whatever she works on next, because she's one of the most talented rappers there is out there, and I hope that it's a little bit tighter like the gray area. I'm not saying I want it to sound like the gray area. I'm not saying I want another gray area. I just hope that it's a little bit tighter. But the one thing she's excellent at is the song making. And the song making does not suffer at all in this album. It is absolutely fantastic. And so while we're saying this is here at number 5, what we're saying is, man, it could have been so much higher. There's actually a world in which you take these off, and we're probably talking about this as 1 or 2. Yeah. That did not happen here, but still a fantastic album for people, a really good album to listen to. And I encourage people to go back and check her other work.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, her EP of the year last year, Drop 6, was my EP of the year, her EP of 2020. Yeah, and I just want to say another thing, right? Like, it's also just not the interludes, but it's also the length. And I think you made an excellent point about it taking away from sort of the flow or whatever. It's very hard to execute an album with interludes. This is why I don't recommend that people do it, at least so often. Like, I don't have a lot of memorable skits in my life, right? There's a few on Capital Punishment, Big Pun's album. There's one on Denzel Curry's album, Zoo, called Yo, which I've talked about on here. And it's only a minute long, by the way. So it's not something that takes away from the flow of the album.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think with skits also too, you got to look at, like, as you get older and you listen to albums as a hip hop fan, do you even care to go back and listen to them? And as I always say, does it pass the cleaning test? There's some skits where I'm like, nope, I'm not trying to hear that
most
right
skits,
now.
Most skits, I agree.
Yeah, but the ones that fit great into the flow of the album, like you see on a Miseducation, Lauryn Hill, or Good Kid, Mad City, or To Pimp a Butterfly, those are really only the 3 I can name. But I won't go skip anything because I'm totally fine listening to them in the flow of the album because they're part of the story. It's very rare, but
Section 80 also. Section
80, that's another one. Kendrick's usually good at that with these skits and understanding how they fit into the flow of the album where they work. But yes, okay, moving on. We both had the same at number 5. Yeah. What'd you have for number 4?
I wonder if we'll have the same number 4, actually.
I wonder.
I think there's a chance because there's a couple albums that, like, we haven't mentioned yet that we know they're going to start, that they're going to start coming.
I think there's a chance. Let's see.
So number 4 is, I think, this artist's second best solo album, probably their third or fourth best project because they've had a couple of
Not okay.
really good,
I know where you're going.
really good
Not my number
mixtapes.
4.
You have this higher, maybe.
I
Okay.
have this higher. Yep.
Okay. So this number 4 for me was The Off Season by J. Cole, who returned this year with the solo project. I think, and like a lot of other people think, I think this is a sentiment that a lot of people would agree with. His second best solo album after Forest Hills Drive. I think his third or fourth best project because the warm up is one of the best, I think one of the best mixtapes ever. It's in that conversation. Then you also have Friday Night Lights, which a lot of people love. I have one skip, Dex, like one egregious run across the room, does not pass the cleaning test. Skip.
Yeah, I know what song it is for you too.
Do you? Which one?
I think it's 100 mil.
Yeah, it's 100
That's
mil.
your song. Yeah,
that's my zone out from this album.
Yes.
I can't stand that record. Like I just can't play it. You know what I'm saying? Like
it's not a run across for me, but it's my least favorite on the album too. Yeah,
I just can't. It's one of my least favorite J. Cole songs that I've heard in a minute. I just don't. But otherwise, look, consistently good, and there are great moments on this album in the off season. It was great to hear, and like it didn't have a theme in the way that some of his other albums did. Like obviously there were moments of introspection and things of that nature. But there was a lot of also flexing and, as well, and even some mixtape vibes. Like we heard Cameron intro him on the very first song. The first 5 tracks, by the way, one of my favorite 5-track runs probably of any album this year. I thought before it gets to 100 mil, it starts off really strong. So I will get to the standouts. Amari is one of my most played songs of the year. I abused my speakers through my laptop, my headphones. Like with this song, I fucking love Amari so much. The Climb Back, which we talked about last year because it came out last year, I think on the Lewis Street EP.
Yep.
That I thought was one of the best songs that came out last year, and I was glad to see that one here because I thought it was the better song on the Lewis Street EP. Punching the Clock. I mean, look,
love that song.
Old school,
one of my favorite songs.
Old school boom bappy vibes. Applying Pressure, by the way, I didn't put it as one of my top 5 standouts in here, but it's right there also because I love and that's the thing about those first 5 tracks, like they all blend into each other so well. I thought he did a great job of that. Pride is the Devil is another one. I saw that was a favorite for a lot of people, which I could still get down with. And then Close. I thought Close was great. Close is one of my favorite songs on here also. Is that the song, by the way, that we heard that it's sort of reminiscent of like Stay with Nas? Like they have some sort of relationship between the two?
Yeah. It's kind of like the same in the way of the use of one word throughout the song. And so
I think I read that he got inspired from Stay and made Close. Right?
Yeah, like which J. Cole actually had the beat for Stay before Nas did.
Yeah, I think I read that. I could be wrong, but anyway, 4 off season J. Cole. Look, and really could have been 3 and could have been 5.
So now, and now I'm wondering if you and I have a flip flop of our 4s and 3s, and that's what I think may have happened here. And we'll see now because I'm going to give you my 4. My 4 was King's Disease 2 by Nas. My 4 was that your 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so
King's Disease 2 is my number 3. We'll get to it.
All right, so and Cold Off Season is my number 3.
Okay,
so there's the flip. So we can talk.
Flip flop King's Disease in the off season. Okay,
yeah, we did. So King's Disease 2, which I'm not going to belabor on too much because we talked about this in a whole podcast, but a really good album from Nas, the follow up to King's Disease 1 last year. Production all handled by Hit Boy. A really good listen. And I just, this was one of these things. Bryan and I, we did this. We're like, let's go back and listen to some of these albums this year. I just went back and listened to it the other day. And I was like, man, this is such a really good listen and a fun listen and one that makes you happy because, people have this insane idea about, rappers get older, they might lose it, they're not in touch with the production. And Hit Boy and Nas just make such a fun album and Nas still sounds great. You heard in the previous episode, Bryan talked about Death Row East, which is a song I absolutely love with the production. 40 Side on some dark trap stuff with Nas is just absolutely killing it. Rare, the lead single on here, a really good song. But my favorite part of the album, there's one thing I love about this album, and this is the thing with this album I've come to over and over and over again. There's many times I play this album and I just go to these 3 songs. 7 to 9. Store run moments, nobody. I'm not sure on any rap album this year, and I got to really think about it. There's a better 3-song run. We talked about the 5-song run for J. Cole to start, but all 3 of these songs are just so good. And then Nobody, where Lauryn Hill comes in with what is one of the best guest verses of the year on this. I think the album's a little bit weaker towards the end, but a really good project. I give about an 8 out of 10 here. Really love what Nas did and Hit Boy did here. So salute to them. Now, since we have King's Disease 2, I have it at number 4. And Bryan, we know he has the off-season number 3. I will just harp a little bit and talk about
off-season number 4.
Off-season number 4, excuse me.
You have off-season number 3. I have King's Disease number 3. So we're flip-flopping here.
We're flip-flopping here. I'm going to just go and talk a little bit about, I'm just jumping ahead for me, for 3 with the off season, and then we can come back to it for Bryan as well too. The off season, I agree with some of the stuff Bryan said here. As many people calling this J. Cole's second best project, album, whatever you want to say, I would agree with that. I think this is J. Cole just went and had fun with this. I think lyrically flex. I think one of the strengths for him on this album was the fact that he worked with a variety of different producers. I know people have criticized Cole for that in the past, but I thought he found producers that worked with him. Bryan talked about Amari. I think a great melodic song, incredibly infectious. Love that song. Probably easily one of my most played songs of the year. Shout out to Timbaland on the production. Timbo's King still got it.
Yes.
Right there. There's a good variety of producers. There's a lot of good standout tracks. Cole is rapping very aggressive on this project, especially in the beginning of the album, Punching the Clock. One of my favorite tracks on the album. Fantastic use of the Damian Lillard interview with Chris Haynes.
Beautiful. I'm glad you pointed that out because that's an interlude in a song that is perfectly utilized.
Yeah, it's perfectly utilized. It's just motivating. I love listening to that song right before I'm about to start a workout.
Yes, you know what I'm here for.
Which is the name of one of my fantasy teams this year. I love listening to this. I love listening to. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you like that. No, seriously, you know what I'm here for. It's one of my fantasy basketball team names this year. I love listening to it before I do anything. It's very motivating. Bryan, you talked about some of the other standout tracks. Obviously, the Climb Back, which was just straight lyrical flex and masterclass by Cole on this. It's a really good album, really tight listen. And I think it's one of Cole's best projects. There's not a great theme to the album other than, I can still really rap. Like, that's kind of really the focus of it here. But I really like Cole's offseason. I had it at number 3. But now we'll go to Bryan, because you had King's Disease at number 3. You had it a little bit higher than I did. And then we can get into the top 2. So why did you have King's Disease 2 at number 3?
And to add to the offseason real quick, I do think one, not theme necessarily, but thinking is because we know the fall off is supposed to be after. And the offseason just comes off to me like, I'm just working on my game. I'm just like out here just showing y'all that I still got it and that I'm still here and I'm still that dude. That's sort of what the, I guess, theme is to me for whatever that's worth. Yeah. So that's sort of what I take it as. King's Disease 2, no, I do not have it at number 1 this year. I have it at number 3. Between both King's Diseases, Dex, because the first one came out last year, we both had it at Album of the Year. This year, you have 2 at number 4, and I have it at 3. I have 0 cleaning skips between both King's Disease albums, which tells you the sort of run that Nas is on with these back-to-back albums. I do have a couple of skips. They're not run across the room skips, though. Now I'm getting skits and skips mixed up, which is great for podcast listeners. I'm sorry, I'm trying here. No Phony Love with Charlie Wilson and Brunch on Sundays are the 2 that I usually skip. And I don't think those songs are egregious skips or anything like that. I think that those could have been like Lucy's, just fun Lucy's or whatever. And I could see where they fit in the album, like structurally, but I do think that those, and they're back to back also. So I just usually just breeze ahead from like straight from track 9 to 12 or 10 to 13 or 11 to 14 or whatever it is at that point. But the album I could play the whole way through, which, I can't say the same about all the albums on this list. So that's an important factor as to why I have it so high. None of the albums like this sort of reflect that in that way. It's a hair below King's Disease 1, in my opinion, even though I think the production is probably a little bit better. I think Nas is lyrically better on part 1, though I think he's still great on here. I think King's Disease 1 is a little bit tighter. It sticks to the theme of King's Disease more. It sticks to a theme more. I think that's overall just better. But King's Disease 2, you could argue, and I probably would, it has higher highs than King's Disease 1, where King's Disease is more consistently at its area. KD2 this year, I think, has higher highs. I think Death Row East is the best song between both albums. I think Lauryn Hill's verse on Nobody is probably as good as anything on King's Disease 1. I think Nas's verse on Death Row East, you could say the same thing there in comparison to everything on King's Disease 1 for the most part. And I thought it was great. I think both albums are great. They're at least 8 out of 10. I'd probably say they're probably in the 8.5 range out of 10 at this point. And they're two. I don't even know if I would say they're two of Nas's better albums because he has a lot of really good albums. I would say these are two middle of the road albums. But if there's middle of the road albums,
middle of the road for Nas.
Yeah, middle of the road albums for Nas, you're talking about like maybe the best hip hop discography ever. So like, what's sort of the bad? That's like talking about an average Jordan season. Like, what is that really, right? Or an average LeBron season. What is that really? When you're talking about middle of the road in terms of like the artists who are GOAT level. My standouts here: Death Row East, which I said was my hip hop song of the year. Pressure, which actually is the intro before Death Row East, and great, amazing 1-2 to start the album, by the way. Like, I was in. And then this run, back to back to back, and you're with me on this because we talk about this. Store Run, Moments, and Nobody.
Yeah.
It's as good as anything this year that came out of hip hop as far as back to back to back songs. And I love that Nas has so much respect for Lauryn Hill that clearly the message was gotten across. Lauryn, do your thing. And Nas didn't even have a super long verse. He has a good verse in that song, by the way, Nobody. Right. He just let Lauryn just get shit off her chest, and it was awesome. And then I thought Nas is Good was a great ending to a great album.
Absolutely. Fantastic. All right. I think I know what your number 2 is, or 1. I'm not really sure. I have a feeling. Go ahead. Give me your number 2. What's your number 2?
Yeah, we're tossing it back to me. That's right. All right, number 2. All the Brilliant Things by Sky Zoo.
I thought so. I thought it would be, and I know we both have the same number 1.
Wow.
So we will talk about that.
2 straight years, the same number 1, perhaps.
Number 1. Yeah.
And the people don't even know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
because they're like,
I don't think so.
Which rapper did is it Conway? Is it West Side Gun?
They have no idea.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. If you know me, you know.
If we're on the same page with number 1,
yeah.
I feel like. I'm going to thank you when we get to that point. But number 2 for me is all the Brilliant Things by Sky Zoo. This was great. Sky Zoo, for people listening, if you've listened to the show, you know he's been on the show several times. We're going to have him back at some point. He is as consistent as it gets in music, period. Full stop. This album for me, no egregious skips. Nothing that I really skip on the regular basis also. Best concept probably out of anything here. My number 1 album may have something to say about that, but in terms of really sticking to a theme, this album did that as good as anything that I heard this year. And Sky Zoo, when he has a theme, he's one of the best at sticking to it, right? Like, we talked about that with other projects that he's had, recently. And it just really feels like an outstanding, just underrated album that a lot of people should go listen to. The second half of the album is exceptional. The second half is really what pushes it over the top for me and has me putting it in my top 2. Has great features from a lot of people, namely BJ the Chicago Kid, Raheem DeVaughn, Black Soul, Al Scratch, who we haven't heard from in a long time. And he even did the whole come around my way shit. It was awesome. And the standouts for me here, there are a bunch. Free Jewelry, which samples The Official by J-Lib, which probably samples, something else, but they use the same sample. There are a lot of actually like really like good samples, and but Sky Zoo is always someone who has like a great ear for beats and has great production. Bodega Flowers, as you mentioned, which blew up on TikTok a little bit. That was a standout song for me. Culture-ish, which is one of my favorites this year. Bed-Stuy is Burning, one of my favorite songs this year, probably my favorite song on this album. And Soft Eyes, I thought was one of my favorite songs to finish the album this year. So Sky Zoo did it again, man. Like usually when he drops an LP, he'll probably find, a spot in my top 10 somewhere. And I could only say that of maybe about a couple other people, but You know, so that's
Agreed.
just great.
He's the last couple times he's been there for sure, and this man was considering retiring. We're glad that
Yeah,
he's not. So we can't wait.
I think I don't know. Like, I probably have this as his third best album or something along those lines. I'm trying to think of where I have
I
it.
do not think this is better than All the Brilliant Things. I do not think it's better than
You don't think it's better than All the Brilliant Things? What do you mean?
no. Oh no, sorry, I said caught myself. Um, I'm confusing it with his album that dropped the first. I don't know why the name is escaping me right now, but when
Music
he
for My
first
Friends?
no, not Music for My Friends. The one after that. God, I'm having a brain fart here on this. This is the one when he first came on our podcast. He had just dropped this album. Um,
Oh, that's his best album. That's
in
his,
celebration
in
of us.
Celebration of Us.
Sorry, I
That's his
couldn't
best
remember the
album.
name of it. In celebration of.
That's his best album.
I like In Celebration of Us, and I love his album with Apollo Brown, The Easy Truth. Those are my two favorites. So yeah, I think this is probably third. I put this right behind there.
I also really like The Salvation because I think that might have been my first experience to him, or Live from the Tape Deck. But look, I mean, look, his top five, I'll put it up against most people. I'll tell you that right now.
It's strong. It's strong. All right, my number two was an album that Bryan had a lot lower, and I think he's tripping on this. But I don't get mad about
really.
It is.
I know what it is.
This album for me, I love To Kill a Sunrise, Code of the Friend, Static Selector.
Yeah.
I love this album. I love the production of it. We've seen some places where some people call it boring, but I think this speaks to a lot of my production. I like it sonically. I think it's very uplifting and positive. I love the message behind the album. I think, our friend Gerard Hector always says there's some albums that just hit you at a certain time and point in your life where you are that just might mean a little bit more. And I think this album meant a lot to me about where I was and some things that was going on in my life that was just very affirmative, very uplifting to things that I needed, especially this year. And I think it's an album I will always think about in terms of this year and where I was and like personal growth and et cetera, that I'm always going to think about it in consistent with this year. Bryan mentioned some of the songs. I had The Love as my song of the year. I absolutely love that song. I think it's great. I think the other standouts on this album, Sunrise and Sunset, fantastic songs to close the album. Wolves, as Bryan mentioned, is a really good song. The Cold. It's an album I found myself playing a lot. It's a really easy listen. There's some mix a little weak in the middle, I could say to some degree, or like maybe not as good as the songs. But I don't think there's anything I'll skip on here. It's a very tight listen. It is 10 tracks. It's about 30 plus minutes long. It's not really that long of a listen. And I do agree with Bryan on this, right? I think there's some room for improvement between Static and Coda. There's some chemistry there. I know of Coda through hearing him on some Static projects. There's some good chemistry there. I think they could do even more together. I wish they would do more together. I was a little bit disappointed. It seemed like there wasn't a lot of promotion for this album in the way I thought there would be. I don't believe they did any videos. Not that that extremely matters, but there wasn't that. One thing I love about this album, not that this factors into my decision with the album, but I do love the artwork, album artwork on this on here. Even a couple of episodes, some people may have seen. I have a mug with the artwork from To Kill a Sunrise. I really love the artist who did that, and now follow that artist. I believe her name is Machina Lu on Instagram. Her work is really fantastic. So that's something that got me into something else. But I love this album. Thought it was a really good message. Strong at the top of the year, dropped in March. Found myself coming back to it constantly. And yeah, I think it's one that I'm going to be playing for a while. It actually has high replay value for me. And I really like it sonically. I think it's a great, also not in a negative way, I think it's a fantastic album to clean the house to and listen to and just vibe and relax. I think it's a good one. But we are now at the number one album. The number one album.
I can't believe we have the same number one, but I also can. I
didn't think this was going to be the same number one for Bryan. I didn't think he was going to like.
I had a feeling I was going to surprise you.
I knew it was.
Last year when I said there's one album this year that came out that is a no doubt in my mind classic. It's this album we're about to talk about.
I agree.
This one. It's absolutely this one. This is a classic album. Probably the best album that's come out in the pandemic. And it says something because there's a theme here that very much relates to the pandemic that we're still all in.
Yeah. This album, I agree, is the only album I think I would say is classic or close to classic that dropped this year. It is extremely high replay value. It is the second album from this artist who I think is easily established himself as one of the best rappers in the world. Now, there will be some bias here. And I think there's a lot of bias because of where he's from. He's from the UK. Maybe some American hip-hop fans are not familiar with this guy. But if you know me, 2 years ago on this podcast, for this award, I gave him the album of the year with his debut, Psychodrama.
Yeah.
This is Dave. I gave it to him. I love that album. I thought it was a fantastic album. And I was like, who is this kid? And I think he is one of these people that we need to be watching and rap. Well, he delivered with a second album.
Yes.
He delivered. I do not think thematically it is probably as tight as Psychodrama, but boy, you can argue it is every bit as good in terms of some songs. There are songs I might say that are better on Psychodrama, but this might have even better flow of production, right? It's a little bit longer of an album, which concerned me at first. And for me, there's really only one skip on this album. It's fine. A classic can have one skip. It can.
Yeah.
But this album,
I know what it is too.
We're All Alone in This Together by Dave.
Yes.
Fan fucking tastic.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
yeah.
you know, like, so you were late to the gray area. I was late to Psychodrama. Because had I heard Psychodrama, it would have been in my top 3 probably that year. I have to remember what else came out that year, but like it was probably would have been right after Bandana and the Gray Area or something along those lines, right? It would have been in that class. Dexter told me about this album, and I got to it a couple months after it came out, so I was late to this also. I've known of Dave. I even watched him in Top Boy play a character that I absolutely hated, but in a good way, like good TV hate, not like actually get him off my screen hate, like the way you hate a wrestling heel. You know what I mean? I was kind of like that with his Top Boy character. I couldn't stand that motherfucker on there. So it shocked me when I heard this album, and I'm like, yo, that's the same dude, or whatever the case may be. But this is the best album of the pandemic for me so far, and that probably, that does include King's Disease 1, I would even say.
Yep, I'd agree.
It certainly embodies just what we're going through more than anything else, and I think there's something to be said for that. Great production, mostly. I think it's the most under-talked about album, especially in America. Maybe in the UK they are talking about it, and I'm sure that he may have plenty of recognition for it because of the names that are attached to here, right? But in the United States, we're not showing a lot of love to non-American things in general, but we are sleeping on this album. Like, I was even a couple months late to it. My verse of the year came from this album, if you remember, right?
Yep, Heart Attack.
Heart Attack, 7-minute long verse. The only misstep, and this is what Dexter was referring to, was In the Fire. That's your one skip because you don't care for posse cuts. And, I probably would have shaved off a couple of the verses, like, after a while. Like, I'm fine with posse cuts. You just got to execute them right. Like, you said everybody's.
Yes, I would have shaved off everybody's.
You know what I mean? Like, there are some classic posse cuts. Like, there's Banned from TV. There's John Blake.
Yeah, I'm not against those. I'm not against those. It's just very hard. It's got to be really good.
Yeah.
And when you're getting everybody in a subject, it is hard. That's why those are great. Like a Banned from TV. Everybody delivers. On this song, everybody did not deliver.
Yeah,
and that's the problem.
Yeah, like even I love Pinata by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. It was their first album before Bandana. That ends on a posse cut where could have caught a couple of the verses from there. There was 8 people on there.
That's too much. I don't need to hear 8 people rap.
Right, and it's the last song on the album, which, I don't love when posse cuts are the last song on the album.
Neither do I. Not a fan of that.
That's not the case here. But, In the Fire doesn't bother me so much. I can listen to it. It's not a run across the room skip, but it is, kind of a skip. But other than that, listen. Woo! The standouts. Verdansk. I mean, you sent me this video because this came out not that long ago. And Verdansk is basically like, that's where you play Call of Duty Warzone, like Modern Warfare. That's where you play Warzone at. And Dave is basically like using that in a lot of different sort of ways. And even in the music video, it looks very much like Call of Duty, which I appreciate it. Clash. I know Dex is here for some Clash. Clash, which features Stormzy, who I like a lot. 3 Rivers was a standout for me. Heart Attack, as you mentioned, and then Survivor's Guilt, which is the last song on this album. Dave, we're all alone in this together. I think it's one of the best projects I've heard in a while, and it stands up there for me as the best album that came out this year, better than everything that came out last year. And right now, I guess you could say it's my album of the 2020s.
No, I think it's fair. It's one of the great albums of the 2020s. I think it's fantastic. I think you're always nervous when somebody puts out a great first album and then how they're going to follow it up with the second. I think the same way I felt about Kendrick going from Good Kid, Mad City to The Pimp a Butterfly. This reminds me of this in this way where somebody just executed very well. As Brian said, all the stuff that Brian hit on, very, it's a good out. I think it's an album about a lot about, where we are sitting with our own thoughts during this time where we can feel very alone. And Dave sort of has this reflection about different things that he's experienced in his life that can make him feel alone through his black experience, as a Nigerian British man, particularly, so there's songs like Three Rivers, which is a fantastic song that talks about immigration and deportation for, Caribbean families in the UK and people of other nationalities who are dealing with immigration from the Middle East to Africa, different things like that. You got him talking about dealing with watching his mom struggle growing up. And the features on this album are really good too. You got Stormzy on Clash, which is a song I absolutely love. It's a fun song, but you'd love it. It's just really, really great. It's a lot. There's a lot on this album. There's love on this album. There's tragedy on this album. There's pain. There's dealing with relationships and sort of all the things that, especially during this time of the pandemic, that we can sit alone with our thoughts. It almost is an extension of his first album because it's kind of like this. Well, I've thought about it more. It's like another therapy session for him. Also, the artwork, album artwork on this is absolutely really good too.
Yes.
It's really good. But no, it's really good. It's almost, he talks about how he is someone in his life, sort of like in a movie. He talks about this multiple times in this album. As the album sort of opens, if you listen to this album, it opens with like the flicker of the reel of a movie projector, which in a weird way is kind of very similar to Good Kid, Mad City, in how that's a short film being told here. But like, no, this is a really good album. It's a really good length. At first, I was worried because his first album was a little bit tighter, and this is a little bit longer. But this is not one of these albums where it's like, oh man, nothing is wasted here, right? Like, the songs are really good. And when I say a little bit longer, we're talking about like a track or two. There's 12 songs, it's an hour a minute. A lot of that length is really helped that there are two really longer songs in this album. Actually, three if you count In the Fire, which I don't think about because I skip it all the time. But Both Sides of a Smile, which is one of my favorite songs this year.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic song. And James Blake is great in feature there. And Heart Attack, which is almost a 10-minute song Brian talked about, is fantastic. Survivor's Guilt, which also features Georgia Smith at the end. Fantastic song. I mean, the songs are so good on this album.
Yes.
Like outside of In the Fire, which we're talking about, and really it's not about production, it's more about length of the song and just features that don't work. There's really nothing whack here. The subject matter is good. Dave is rapping as good as ever. I think he's rapped better than anybody else. Arguably this year, this is to me is the best rap project this year. I do not really think that it is close at all whatsoever. This is a fantastic album. If you're not into, look, I've been saying this. I said this, I think, in 2019. The UK is putting out a lot of good rap, and some of my favorite rappers right now are from the UK. Right, Loyal Corner, Dave, Little Sims. Brian talked about
AJ
Gets
Tracy,
here.
Gets.
AJ Tracy. There's a lot of good
Skepta.
There's a lot of good diverse
Stormzy.
sounds. Stormzy also a lot of diverse
Merkston.
sounds coming out of the UK right now, and it's just really good and refreshing. This album was really refreshing, and Dave did it again. So for me, easily my hip hop album of the year. And it's nice, Brian and I agree. Second year in a row, we're all alone in this together. At least we weren't alone in our thoughts on what the number one album was here. So we're all alone in this together by Dave. Number one album this year. Brian, before we wrap and we get out of here, did you have any honorable mentions at all this year?
Yeah, La Machina by Conway, The Machine. Act the pool in that pussy like it's April 1st. Whatever the fuck he said. That shit was fucking hilarious to me. Act the fool in that pussy like it's April 1st. That shit was one of the bars of the year for me. Also has Scatterbrain, which is a fun joint. Vince Staples by Vince Staples. Also, we were talking about
which we had for an EP.
Yeah, that was close for me. Bo Jackson by Bully James and Alchemist. I liked it. Didn't like it as much as The Price of Tea in China. I thought that was better. They actually just released something else right before we recorded this, but I mean, it's kind of late for that, right? And then Joel Ortiz Autograph. I think Joel Ortiz Autograph also. And then the Hami joint that we talked about a little bit. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of people, we've been going on for a minute, so my light is like dead now. But a lot of people, you know what I'm saying, like love that album. And for me, it's like I liked it, but it just didn't crack my top 10 for me. And normally underground projects, like I'm there, I'm a backpacker, the whole shit. But I just thought that everything on my list was better. So.
Yeah, I didn't really have much honorable mentions. I guess I could mention the Makami joint. I kind of listened to that late in the year on the recommendation of a friend. Thought it was solid. Just didn't grab me extremely in that way. Probably put the AJ Tracy there too in that category for me. But I don't think this was a strong year from hip hop. The album I've easily played the most probably is Dave, because I think it is the best. Then the Code of the Friend, and then the ones that are in the top 5 or 6 were the ones I kept coming back to a lot.
Yep.
Let's hope that 2022 is a lot better.
Kendrick,
we need Kendrick. We need you, man. J. Cole.
We're going on 5 years, Kendrick.
Yeah, we need you, Kendrick. We need.
Nas, take a break, bro. You deserve it.
Kendrick, we need you. Verses. Jay, I'd like to hear something from you.
Nas,
again.
if you want to put out that Primo joint, though, like if the Primo album, like if you want to do that,
Prime. I know Prime 3 is coming for a premiere. Talk about that with him and Royce. We know that's coming. So it'll be some good stuff. Black Thought was supposed to drop Dangerous Thoughts with Dangerous Mouth this year. We still haven't seen that. What's up, Black Thought? We need that. Static is coming with a new joint. We know that.
Joey Badass.
Where
you at, Joey?
He's got a single supposed to be coming soon, but he said that about 5 weeks ago.
Griselda's gonna have. They're gonna come
out with mad stuff. So yeah, looking forward to 2022, and we will see what happens there. But until then, please follow the AHTT podcast on all social media platforms. Be sure to continue to support us. If you like the content that we do via Patreon, definitely check that out. And as always, we want to thank our patrons for their fantastic support. And we also have a little promo with Prize Picks, which you can check out in the show notes that you can do. Sign up with Prize Picks. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. But, till then, like I said, just follow us. We will be back in 2022. Wishing everybody a fantastic holiday season. Be safe, be healthy, get vaxxed, mask up, do the right thing.
Get boosted. I'm trying. I'm working on it. It's actually getting hard to make appointments for this shit.
Yeah, you got to get on that.
I'm trying. I'm calling. Yeah. I'm not,
Happy holidays. Happy New Year to everybody. We'll be back in 2022 with a lot of great stuff.
Freddie Gibbs, you too. Your album also.
Yes, we know Brian's waiting for that. along with the next Splinter Cell. Until next time, y'all, in 2022.
Yes.
Peace.